Okay, hi everybody. So let's get right to it. Our first step is going to be to identify the variable. So the variable is the letter, the unknown value we are trying to find. So for number 1, our variable is the x. Here, let me erase that. Not the plus. Just the x. That's the unknown. So whenever you see a letter, that is going to be the variable. Now our next step is going to be to translate. Okay? Now translate means to change from one form into another. So right here we have an equation. That's a sentence in math. We want to translate it. We want to make it a sentence in English. Well, let's read what it says. It says x, so I'll write x. This is a plus sign, so plus 17 equals 92. X plus 17 equals 92. That's it. We have translated. What's the next step? Well, eventually we want to figure out what this x is. So to do that, we need to identify the inverse. The inverse operation. So like we talked about in class, we have to think about how we undo what we did. So what did we do? We had an x and we added 17 to it. We did x plus 17. So what's the inverse of plus 17? That's going to be minus 17. So that's the inverse. And the last step is to solve. So solve means to apply the inverse operation. So that minus 17, we have to do that to something. So look at what we have here. We had x plus 17 equals 92. We identify our inverse. So we're going to say minus 17. We have to do that to both sides. And that gives us... So because we did the inverse, this cancels out. This is gone. And now we have x equals 92 minus 17. What's that? 92 minus 10 is 82. And then minus 7 is 75. Okay, that's all through the power of inverse operations. Why don't you try doing 2. So all the steps: identify the variable, translate into English, identify the inverse operation, and solve for number 2. So number 2, the variable is x. This says 10 equals x minus 22. 10 equals x minus 22. Okay. And identify the inverse operation. Well, what has happened to the x? We minused 22 from it. So now we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to say plus 22. So x. So now we're going to solve. Let me scroll down a bit more. So remember, we had 10 equals x minus 22. We do our inverse, so plus 22 plus 22 equals, remember these cancel out, and it doesn't matter that x is on the right side. We still know that this is x on its own, and that x equals whatever 10 plus 22 is. What's 10 plus 22? 32, that's right. So we got x equals 32. If you like, you can write it like that. Alright, now let's look at this one. We are getting into different inverse operations. So, what's the variable? X, the most popular variable. And in English, this says 40 equals 5 times x. Okay, so the way we find our inverse operation is by looking at what's happening to the x. Well, here you have 5 times x, right? We don't care about what's on the other side of the equal sign for now. So we look at this 5 times x. Times means multiply. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. So we divide by x? No, we divide by 5. Okay? Whatever happened to x, we're going to do the reverse. So we divide by 5. And now watch the magic. So you got 40 equals 5x. Now we divide by 5. We divide by 5. What's 40 divided by 5? If you said 8, you are right. And we cancel these out. We get x. And again, you could write it with x on the left side. X equals 8. Okay, so remember, just to reiterate, when we had plus, we did minus. When we had minus, we did plus. And when we had times, we did divide. Okay, that's really the key to this whole thing. Okay. But oh no, look at this. We're going to have to use a different inverse operation than we have been using. But we're going to be okay. What's the variable here? Okay, what does this say in English? X divided by 11 equals 6. Excellent. X divided by 11 equals 6. So we need to find our inverse operation. Well, when we had times 5, we did divide. So now we're doing division. We need to do the opposite. So our inverse operation is going to be multiplication. We are going to multiply by the number that we divided by. So here we divide by 11. Now we're going to multiply by 11. Okay. And now we're almost here. So x divided by 11 equals 6. Okay. We're going to do times 11. Times 11. Oh, whoops. You didn't see that. Times 11. Times 11. Okay. These go away. We have x alone. What's 6 times 11? 11 is my favorite number to multiply by. And there you go. Got 3 things. So good luck.